Hey guys, Jeff here with the YouTube channel The Wolf of Wisco. In this episode of the Volkswagen bus getting a Subaru engine, we're going to go through the cooling system and basic installation on how I'm going to mount the radiators. I got the Volkswagen up on the lift here and I'm starting to mount the radiators. So the VW engine is air cooled, and when you got a liquid cooled engine going in, the Subaru engine right here going in, you got to add radiators to cool the Subaru engine. The old air intake on the air-cooled Volkswagen, they would draw air in. There's a channel I'll show inside the body that would come down, and that would feed this engine compartment with, cooler, clean air. Or so much ambient air, I don't know if it's clean, but it would, cool air versus hot engine bay air. And there was a blower motor built on the Volkswagen engine that would blow through the fins of a Volkswagen and cool it. Well, on the Subaru, we've got a water pump and a cooling system like most water-cooled cars or liquid-cooled cars. So that's we got to mount radiators. There's a couple ways to do it. You can belly mount the radiator, up underneath, take out this old heater tube. You can mount it here, but I am going to mount an air conditioning system that was on the bus. I removed it so I could work under here. Here's a look at the aftermarket AC evaporator coil that was on the bus. I'm going to clean this up, get it back installed, and hopefully get it working. That's going to go underneath here, taking this real estate. So I opted for the other version here, which is called engine bay radiators. And there's a couple companies out there that sell engine bay radiator kits, and I'm basically doing it on a budget. So these are eBay radiators. This one is a Volkswagen Scirocco radiator. It fits the full width of the bay back here from side to side, top to bottom. I've got a small 1-inch spacer up here, but I've made a bracket, and I'm going to make a U-channel bracket to hold the bottom. So that radiator here, the filler neck, it goes up in this corner, accessible up here with a filler neck. You want the filler at the high point for getting out the air in the system. And then on the other side, this is a passenger side, as I mentioned, this is where the cold air comes from, up inside here. See that vent? And that vent, when you're driving, blows air or it vents air, a little bit of pressure to this area. And it's a perfect spot to put a radiator on both sides. This side gets a smaller radiator about to here. It's out of a Honda Civic. And this, I've also opened up this window. I punched this hole here and put a hole here. Cold air is in this, in this area for the engine. It'll draw through here, and I'm going to run an air cleaner inside of here. So there'll be a panel here with a hole plugged in it. We'll show that later, but there'll be an air cleaner running over here. So this cold air intake area is going to be dual purpose, one for cooling engine and for drawing air intake with cooler air, instead of just putting a lot of guys will put an air filter in the hot engine bay and draw hot air. I'm going to put one here. I saw a couple of guys on the interwebs doing that. The other radiator here, this is a little Honda Civic radiator, and it's also got transmission cooler lines on it. I will be hooking these up, and we'll show the mounting and how that works. Here's the lower bracket I fabricated. This lower bracket's just a U-channel, and I'll be lining this with some foam, some rubberized foam with a self-adhesive back. Got a couple tabs here, but once I put the foam in it, this will kind of mount like this, and mount right here at the bottom, so the radiator can pocket into here and also pocket into this channel right here. And I'm going to run a little angle iron across here, just a short one, to keep the radiator from falling inward and to help provide a seal. One of the key elements to these engine bay radiators is to seal this compartment off with foam all the way around and put electric fans on here. That way, all of the air that's being driven through the vents comes through the radiator to cool. It doesn't bypass the radiator and sneak around it any which way. Obviously here, this will be sucking in the engine, but it won't be leaking out leaking out. It'll be doing its job cooling. So that's also needs to be done here. Be tucking foam in here, and there's a little bit of areas to plug up on both sides. So that's an overview. That's what we're doing on the cooling for the liquid cool for the Subaru engine. And on this lower bracket, I'll go past just to the end of the radiator here. Looks like I'm gonna have trouble back here behind. I'll make it 22.5. That way we can U-channel and support on the frame. So 22.5. 22.5 on the U-channel. And I'll probably notch this corner out after we're all done, but let's just. Okay. See how that fits. It's kind of nice having the lift and getting up in the engine bay. I'm gonna leave this one flush on this side, maybe just sticking over a little. And on this side, we want to support on this metal bracket, on the framework of the radiator, and we got to have some hose clearance, but it'll be something like this. We'll just kind of round this off, remove that section. Got that cut off. Bracket in here, flush with this, as you recall. Now I got a gap here. Nice. So I think I'm ready to deburr this. It fits. We're gonna pull that out. Instead, installing the channel right here to hold the radiator. So small self-tappers, I pre-drilled some holes. I put a 1-inch aluminum spacer to space down the radiator because the Scirocco radiator got about a 1-inch gap up top. So with the Scirocco radiator, I was able to do that by adding a little notch. You can probably put this in or out however you want, but I wanted to tuck this back for, far back as I could, and I just wanted a little clearance there. So now we're going to get the bottom. Give them a quick coat of paint. Okay, I'm taking the sponge window seal. This is a 1-inch wide by 1/4 thick, and I've laid a couple layers in the channel and a couple layers on the side, and that'll lay right on top and straddle and hold the radiator basically on the two widest points are really the only points of contact, and then seal along the top edge. I've got this, I left that small fitting, nipple fitting there. It doesn't use for anything. It's just a locator from the vehicle. So, seems to grab it pretty well. Let's get it installed here. I've got some of this air conditioning weather seal foam. Comes in a 1 by 1.25 inch block. I cut it in half because I'm gonna just use some 3M spray adhesive and center it here. And when I put the radiator down in here, that'll prevent airflow around the radiator by sealing off, this whole pocket here. It'll compress in. So that's the plan for both the top and the bottom. 3M Super 77 adhesive. I'm gonna spray these. It's just easier if I spray those versus trying to install radiators under here. It's gonna go up. The other one's going up in this channel, and the other part's going here. One of them's going here. Hopefully you guys can see up in there, that U-channel right there, lined with foam. Near the bottom of the radiator, U-channel lined with foam, and I got a couple nutserts installed here offset so they don't contact the radiator. And kind of the way it goes is I slide the radiator into the foam bracket. Get the top started. And then I can push upward and compress the foam. And I can drive my two small screws, they're 832s that can go up into the nutserts and hold this in place. Serviceable type. Okay, here's the passenger side radiator. This is the Honda Civic. It's got the fittings for the transmission cooler, and I'll show you how I'm going to mount this bottom bracket here. This bracket will be mounted right here, and I've got a hole in the framework of the bus, one in front, one in back. Lines up like this. The radiator is going to sit in here. I've got a small rib nut. This rib nut is going to be, I'm going to install the rib nut with the rib nut tool here. It's basically a rivet gun. I've got a rib nut screwed in here. This is 832. I was going to use 1032 for the thread size, but I have 832 hardware, so it's going to get a couple. I thought about using just zip screws, but self-tap or sheet metal screws, but I think in the long run the rib nut in and out service getting behind here. I also just installed a couple rib nuts here. Those are 1032s, and that'll allow, I don't know what it had for, this other side, on the other side it had nuts on the inside, so you have to hold on the nut. I just put a rib nut here just for, I gotta still bolt in the light, but that'll be, you can access from external for servicing behind. Once the cooler is in here, I won't be able to really get in there. All right, we're gonna pull the tail lights here. Little rear view look at it. I got a deep well, 8mm back here. Pull the 4 bolts and get that pulled out. We're gonna put nutserts on that tail light. Zip this tail light out quick. My lens, just to see what I got to work with. Okay, yeah. So there's a stud that's kind of melted in there, and that's what we got to remove. I recommend putting a nutsert right here. These tabs here, there's 4 of them. That way you can just take the stud out, remove the stud here, and then you can run just a panhead bolt here, and the lens covers that up. That way it's accessible, and then you could access back here behind the radiators or whatever you want to get at, the wiring for the other lights or vent lines, whatever, back behind there. All right, so there's kind of a neat method. This is the small stud that's pressed in here. It's actually, I think, put in, and then some plastic is just melted around that. I suppose you could melt the plastic, take a Dremel. I'm just grabbing this with a channel lock. I got a, 10-11mm socket just so the head can pop through. I'm grabbing that stud like that, and I'm going to push the stud my way up. It doesn't take much. Popped right out. There's not a lot of plastic holding that stud in. Okay. There it is. It just breaks a little plastic loose. To pop those out, now I'll put in 4 nutserts. I can put it back in and just put a pan head. Hey, here's a pic of the nutsert with a nut screwed in. This is an 832. A 1032, I'd have to drill a bigger hole here, and there's not a lot of material around the ear here. This is measuring 229, 230, and I need to go 260. I've got a bit here that's a 262.5. Let's get that drilled out. Okay, got the nutsert tool here already queued up, ready to rock. Oh, that's a good fit. Oh, nice, because I can actually see the crimping going on in the back. Okay, there's one. We'll get in for a close-up view here. There it is right there. So I'll hit all four of these, and then and then I'll be able to pop the lens right in. Here's a close-up view of what that looks like. The plastic that blows out right here, but there's another shoulder material back there where the head of the bolt can ride against. So that'll be a nice feature. Removable tail lights. I'm going to put stainless steel. I got some stainless steel fasteners here. Get the wire tucked back in. Get that. Yeah, now that's serviceable behind there. Okay, one more. Okay, that side's done. I'm gonna hit the other side. Let's get a look at this. So these two lights will be accessible from the outside, pulling it. And like the radiator is gonna be here. All this area back here is inaccessible. Now that I got the nutserts for the tail light installed and for that little marker light, now I can access this area. Not like I got to get back in here, but just in case something happens with some wiring or whatever, I can get to the back. And also that'll be used so I can inspect the radiator. You know, this is pretty high up for venting. I don't expect a lot of bugs and crap to come in here. A guy could put some screen over this. Maybe that would be a good plan, just to keep debris out of there. But if you had to wash it out, you could get in here with a hose and wash it out. I could always drill from the bottom, drill a drain hole in here, and just a small drain hole, but that was a great upgrade. So we're gonna go top first, and then we're just gonna slide it in like this. Okay, let's talk about electric fans for this. I really like the clean look and not having a big electric fan in the engine bay. And I also saw a couple posts on the Facebook where the electric fan, if put behind the radiator pushing, it's better than pulling on this side. This would be a puller fan. If you put it on the other side, it's a pusher fan. I actually bought this. This is for the passenger side. This is a Honda Civic radiator off of eBay. I bought the Honda Civic, easy to mount, bolt right on. This will fit in the engine bay here on the outside. It does stick out quite a bit, a few inches. It will not fit on the inside. It won't fit back in here. I won't be able to bolt it on. It just won't work. So I got another option here. You bought the eBay double 12-inch radiators. These will fit behind. You know, it covers most of the radiator. I will not be shrouded here. That's one thing these don't do. They do not have a shroud all the way out to this area, and especially on that larger radiator, there's no shrouding. You know, I'm going to be using this much of the radiator, and the other bit of the radiator, it's whatever gets passed through from, you know, the vent, getting through the vent system. So I'm going to try it. I've got the other fans. I haven't returned them yet, but even this Civic fan, that doesn't cover this area, doesn't cover this area. It has a little bit of a shrouding this area to help draw. So I have decided, living in Wisconsin, it does get, you know, it'll 90, 100 sometimes here, but not often. So the plan is to try to use these 12-inch radiators behind as pushers, and we'll see how it works. Stock Honda Civic radiator, just a shop towel. It's blowing pretty good. I mean, 3-4 feet out. It's fairly quiet. We'll see what this one does on the puller mode. Fairly quiet too, a little higher pitch maybe. You know, and I'm trying to determine, does it matter? Does that matter going through the radiator? You would think yes, but how much air needs to move through here? I sure would like to use this. And this is really bad when you spin it around. When you spin it around this way and try to blow through the radiator like I wanted to do. Okay, we're going to try it on the blower mode. I spun the fan around. It's going to do a. This is if I was to put the fan behind the radiator, hidden in the window bay. It's kind of like a. Seriously, this is on suction mode. It's trying to pull it through. But you get over here, and it's that's a weird airflow. Maybe do that center hub. It's supposed to be a push or a pusher or a pull, and it works better as a pull. It works better to suck air through the radiator. It could be used like this and draw air through. If I flip it around and try to push like I want to do, push air from the backside, it does not work as well. And this stock Honda radiator out of the Civic, which will mount directly on here only if it's in the engine bay, has got the best airflow, and it's shrouded. So that is, you know, by the quick test here with the shop rag, I think that's the better bet. But I do love this slim design. It's like half the thickness, so. Taking another look here at the cooling system. So I've got, of course, the hoses hooked to the hose hooked to the engine, running through, going across the tube installed here, connecting the other radiator. That one's just a little bit of a elbow hose. I chopped off a longer hose, and I do have the this 1.25 inch necking down to 1 inch. And the reason I neck it down to 1 inch with this adapter, this is just a plastic T-fitting with a neck down to 1 inch. I couldn't find that exact adapter. I found a threaded version. I screwed in this 1 inch adapter. This bracket that I made, this is gonna mount up to those threaded inserts. I put a couple of 1/4-20 inserts. This is gonna bolt up there, and that is gonna retain my, and here's my coolant filler neck. It's gonna run underneath here. I'm gonna basically put it right in a spot, right in this location in the corner. Here's the bracket I'm going to be using to hold my coolant filler neck, and I've got a couple holes punched in here, and that'll be sitting flat here. One thing I don't like about these rib nuts is once you put the rib nut in, it sits a little bit proud of the sheet metal, and it's got a flange on it. So I want this bracket to sit flat on here. What I'm going to do is I coin this in using a couple sockets. What I do here is I put like a 5/8 socket like this, and then I'll take another socket, set it above it, and hit it with a hammer, and then the rib nut can sit in that coined area. I'll just kind of flatten that out here. So we're going to coin down that hole. That way the rib nut can sit below flush here and be flat here. So kind of an eyeball thing. I'm just going to eyeball right over it. You want it centered. Then I'm going to put the other smaller socket right over the hole and give it a good smack. And that pops down that one area, just that small area here. See, it's coined like that, which now allows this rib nut to sit below flush. Nice flat surface to put this on too without having it kind of wobbling on the rib nuts. 1/4-20 rib nut in the tool here. I've got it dropped into that pocket. You see how it expands around the back here? That's how that rib nut works. Of course, it's threaded, so you got to screw this off. That's below flush here now, so that'll work good. There we go. Yeah, that way this plastic bracket sits flush, and I'll have two captivated rib nuts here. I don't have to reach under and hold a nut underneath there. It It's just kind of a fun tool for adding. Otherwise, you can weld, take a 1/4-20 nut, weld it on the bottom of here. I'm using stainless hardware as well. Got the bracket here. I do have a little gusset here to keep it from flexing. We'll see. It's thin sheet metal. I just got some stainless 1/4-20s here. Okay. Got a little flex to it. That's fine. I could always add a little rib in the center if I want to stiffen that up a little bit. It's just holding that rubber filler hose here. And I'll cut off what I need here on the hose, maybe a 1/2 inch. I'm good to go. Well, I've got a coolant overflow bottle here from a Suzuki Samurai, and this is a nice small coolant bottle, and it mounts using kind of a keyhole type bracket. I just sawed a little bracket out of some sheet metal, and there was a former bracket here on the firewall. I forget what it was. It was a little taller here, and it held something for the bus. I cut it off. I'm going to weld right onto that, and I've got the height set up so, you know, the top of this bracket is about here. So I got a little bit of room for, you know, for clearance for the hatch down here below it. And it's about flush with my coolant filler. Then I can run the overflow hose into the top of the tank. I like this tank better than the Dorman tank. Here's the Dorman tank here. The Dorman tank would also work. It's pretty bulky, and the mounting is similar. I'd have to put a couple screws in here. I kind of like the keyhole better. What I don't like about the Dorman tank is I don't know if it's bad. I just don't, you run the hose underneath into here, and then when it fills up the tank, when the engine cools down, sucks it back in, it just comes out of the bottom. No big deal. I kind of like this. Samurai one has the coolant. Everything's right in the cap, so I run right over high in the cap, and then there's a standpipe tube that goes down to the bottom that sucks it back out. So a little cleaner, I think. So we're gonna go with that. So I'm gonna weld this on right here, and then shoot a little bit of paint back on here. Maybe I'll paint the backside first. That way I can get paint behind it, and then I got a couple of holes here, and I can do a couple of rosette welds and grind those flush. That way the coolant bottle can then slide without rubbing on the welding here. I like having the rib here. It's real handy because the rib is actually a nice standoff that allows the bottle to, you know, slide on. There we go. I'm going to hit that with a grinder, kind of clean that up. Okay. All right. Let's see how it fits on here. Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. That keyhole's right on. So half of it's blank, and then the second keyhole. So that's kind of a nice lockdown. And the existing Suzuki Samurai hose runs right over there. They're real clean, a lot of airflow here. That's nice. And then if a guy wanted, you put a drain hose just drop down. I think the factory Samurai hose is a formed L-shaped hose. It just kind of hangs here a couple inches down. And these are like 10 bucks on eBay. This is a used one that I had off an old Samurai, Suzuki Samurai. I think you just look in there. It's got the cold, the low, the full, and then inside it's got the standpipe. So it drops it down, and then it sucks it back in after the engine cools and needs the coolant to come back in. That's kind of the nice feature of this one. Everything's from the top with just a cap that snaps on. So everything's up top here and easy to access versus running a hose out the bottom on some of those universal tanks. So the other thing here, I've got a 22 millimeter port. There are filler neck kits out there. Subaru guy online has a filler neck, but I am right up against this panel. The gas tank is behind here. So I am going to use this port, I believe, for a coolant sensor. I found a 22 millimeter plug It's a straight thread, but then I found one that has a 3/8 center, and I can put an adapter and put a 3/8 pipe thread for a coolant temp sensor in that port right there if I'd like. That's kind of nice. Or I'll just put a plug in it. So everything's easy and accessible, and you know, then the lid will shut down here. So everything shuts and works. So check the coolant right here. Put a little touch-up paint on that bracket. All right, guys, that's a wrap on the cooling system. I'll do a real quick recap on it and we'll shut her down for today. Thanks for watching. Cooling system recap here. So we've got both radiators mounted. Slim electric fans, gonna pull the air through on both sides. Got the filler, coolant filler, 90-degree elbow here, 1-inch rubber hose coming here to an adapter going to, this is a T, and that's a 1.25 inch T. I've got a couple of rubber sections here, aluminum pipe coming over to this radiator. That's an 1.25 inch tube. And of course, transmission lines here in this cooler, radiator, slim electric fan. I can still access this oil filler, and yeah, it's pretty tight and clean. Just add a little foam here to keep the air from blowing, you know, past the radiators. All right, for the radiator hoses, for the driver's side, I've got a 21752 Gates. It's a little small for this side. It does fit on the radiator, the Scirocco radiator. I'm gonna have to cut off. I'll probably cut off 6 inches on this side and stretch this to fit over here. This hose on the passenger side is another Gates number 21191, and that has a flared end. It goes down on the water pump outlet near the thermostat, and it's got the kind of the correct bends to sweep around and plug right in the radiator. I could probably cut off 1 inch here to keep it flowing, but these were suggested by Subaru, guy on the YouTube that been doing a bunch of swaps, and kind of followed some of his recommendations for the radiators and these hoses. So thanks to Subaru. Top view here, easy to access this filler cap here for the coolant, along with the Suzuki Samurai coolant bottle. Real nice slim coolant bottle, works great. It's got the pickup tube that'll suck the coolant back into the system. So real clean install. So pretty happy with that.